Got it. Hey, everybody, welcome. Is everybody coming in? Okay, there y'all are.
Hi.
Hey, great. I'm so excited y'all are here.
Yes.
Right on. Well, I'm seeing a whole bunch of blank screens. Does anybody want to turn on their video just so I could see your face? I'd love to see your faces. I guess not. Hey, there you are. Hi, Vanessa. A face. I love it.
Hi.
I'm glad you're here. Where are you from? Hi,
I'm from
Olivia.
Congo.
From where?
Congo.
Hey, great. Wow. That's wonderful. Olivia, good to see ya. Where are you from? And there's Lori from Blue Ridge, Georgia. Welcome, welcome. We'll give it a minutes and let people come in. Great.
Yes, if everyone will put in the chat where they're from, we would really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Great, great. Well, I've got a lot to talk about tonight, and I'm so excited that y'all are here. Thanks for setting out this time and carving out this time. I'm just really, really thrilled. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll figure out how to share my screen. Just a sec. Okay. Great. Can y'all see that? All right. I am not used to sharing over Zoom, so you all have to kind of be graceful with me. This is all new to me, but I have given presentations with live people. So staring at your screen is a little bit unnerving for me, but I'm going to get used to it, and we can get this going here. So you've come from somebody came from San Jose. Welcome, Becca. Good to see you. That's okay. If you need to have a blank screen, no problem, no problem. But gosh, I am excited about the faces that I do see and the screens and the names. Anyway, okay, from conflict to connection. That's what you all signed up for. I hope you're in the right place. The Enneagram way of regaining and maintaining connection with your child. So I'm starting us off with a little bit of some somber news here. According to Carl Pillemer in his book, Fault Lines, Fractured Families and How to Mend Them, research showed that 25 million Americans are estranged from parents or parents from their children. And gosh, that just breaks my heart. And I'm sure it breaks yours too. When we bring our children home, whether it's from the hospital or from an adoption, we don't ever look into their eyes as we're cuddling at them and say, someday we're not ever going to talk to each other. We dream about what their life is going to be and what our lives are going to be together. And
Does it have who's on it?
16 participants. Jada, me.
I'm sorry, Trisha, will you unmute yourself?
All right. Are we back on?
Yes.
Okay. And so I know that breaks my heart, and it must break your heart too. Okay. Whoa, what happened here? All right. Parenting is to deeply know your children and their needs, then actively meeting their needs in a caring way so that our children are not alone. David Ferguson said that. The not alone part is really important. You know, when we study emotion, underneath all bad emotion like anger or fear or disappointment, all of those negative emotions, what's underneath that is this feeling of being alone. And in fact, if you stair step people back to what would happen if that happens, what would you feel? If that happens, what would you feel? And you do a little stair stepping. Underneath all of that is this feeling of being alone. And so a lot of our behavior is because of that. We're trying to avoid being alone. And so being connected with somebody is really, really important. And as a first relationship, as a mom or a dad, that first relationship sets that up, that feeling of not being alone. According to Dr. Becky Kennedy, events with high emotion that get processed in aloneness become traumatic memories. This is not only painful memories like abuse, but this is also happy memories. Imagine a child coming home from getting the highest grade they've ever gotten, and they run in the house, but nobody's there to congratulate them. That excitement becomes aloneness. And later on, they say, hey, nobody was there to rejoice with me or to be there to congratulate me. And so both sides of the emotion spectrum, there is a sense of if there's aloneness, that memory becomes traumatic. And it's our job as parents to come alongside our children and remove their aloneness. So the job of a parent is to be connected with self, with yourself first, and then your child. As our children grow up, when we are connected with our own selves, we also allow our children to become self-aware of themselves. We're there to affirm their worth or their value. Think about it. As a mom, you're the first one that knows that child's rhythm, even from the womb. You're the first one who knows their smell and their laughter, and dads, you're the first one that gets to, hear their hiccups and feel their, and encourage them as they're running. And that job doesn't change as the children grow. Your job just changes a bit based on their age. So it's our job as parents to guide and to teach, to help navigate, and that looks different as your child grows up. So when they're really young, your job is to make sure they know how to do things like tie their shoes and feed themselves. But as they grow up, the job doesn't become as physical, it becomes more emotional, coming alongside of them and supporting them. So these are my treasures. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. My husband and I have been married for almost 30 years. And in our first year of marriage, it was an awful year, as most first years are. And I went to lunch. I met my mom for lunch, and she was working through this workbook. And at this time, I was getting my master's in marriage family counseling, and I was in an interpersonal communications course. And what my mom was studying in this workbook was the same thing I was learning in my class. And so I said, gosh, Jeff and I need this. And so we enrolled in our first class and had a blast doing it. But man, the habits that we had to form in this were so different than what we had done previous. And so in order to stay in the process and changing our habits, we decided to teach it. And so, so we taught for a couple of years, and then I got pregnant with this guy. This is my oldest. His name's Jeremy. And at that time, the author of the curriculum came out with a parenting curriculum as well. And so I started to teach that. And that worked so well with Jeremy, and then Sean, who's the guy standing in the back, and then Maggie was born. And that the curriculum was so powerful and had a lot to do with connecting and giving each other respect and teaching how to be supportive and that sort of thing. And it worked. It worked wonders. Well, we were called to adopt, and Rebecca enters our family. And Rebecca was born in China. When we brought her home, she was 1.5 years old. And if you know anything about brain and connection and attachment theory, 1.5 is probably one of the worst times to take a toddler out of their life and put them into another life. But I am so grateful for the personality that she has, because that personality got her through her first 1.5 years of life. And it caused her to not be, to not have as many effects as it could have had. But her family skills were not very well developed. She would take food from us at the table, and she'd push her way through the kids, through the family. And she made sure that she would get her own needs met. Well, that made me dive into adoption related material. And I found Karen Purvis from Touch Base Relational Intervention down in Texas. And the discipline techniques that I learned from her was very, very helpful. And I also learned about sensory issues and brain development. And that led me to get my certification through Empowered to Connect. But as much as these disciplines helped me parent her, there was something about Rebecca that made me feel like I was a bad parent. See, she wore anger kind of as a security blanket. And first thing in the morning, she would come downstairs, and I just instantly felt that I was a bad mom, instantly. And I couldn't figure out why. And what really happened is the bricks just started to be built between us. There was a wall. And I didn't like that, because the other 3 kids and I had such a great relationship. And there were things that would happen with them, but we would work it out. And I had the tools, and my husband had the tools to manage that and to navigate all of those unfamiliar territories. And yet with Rebecca, nothing would happen. And yet I would feel like I was losing her. And I didn't want that. This is my little sweet pea right there. And so oftentimes I would find myself saying, go play with your sister, or kind of pushing her away. And that was not what I wanted to do. And so at that time, the buzz around my social circles was the Enneagram. And I pretended I knew what I was doing, because I've been a part of this mental health community for a long time. And so I pretended to talk about the Enneagram. Well, my second son got a scholarship clear across country. And as we were driving him to drop him off at school, one of the books that he had to learn in class was about the Enneagram. It was an Enneagram primer. And I opened the book and started reading, and I read about the type 8 child, and I bawled, because that was my daughter. And it explained exactly what was happening between the 2 of us. And when I came home from dropping Sean off at school, I was able to say, hey, Rebecca, is this you? And the connection just lit on fire. And even to this day, she is, she's fiery and independent. And the great thing about that is I'm able to accept that, and she's able to accept who I am, and it gave us communication. So what is the Enneagram? The Enneagram is a dynamic and powerful personality system that describes 9 different patterns of thinking, feeling, and acting. This tool helps increase self-awareness and knowledge to personal growth, giving insight into your behavior, as well as your motivation, passions, instincts, and stress points. So the Enneagram has been around forever. There's been traces of it in tribal communities. There's been traces of it in classical books and, all over the place. But tonight we're going to take a look at the Enneagram in parenting. Now, this is not a popular view. Many people in the Enneagram world think that children shouldn't be typed until they're adults. My philosophy is that as long as you hold their number lightly, then it's okay. As long as what the Enneagram does is it gives you a tool. It gives you words that you both can use to communicate about what's happening in the heart. So I really believe that parenting is one that when you receive your child, it's like receiving a gift. And as your child grows up, you're opening that gift. And oftentimes we just open the bow and take off the wrapping, but we don't get down into the box. We don't remove the packing material. We just let it sit there. And then we expect that child to know what to do and how to launch off into the world. What the Enneagram does is just open the box, take out that packing material, and actually pull out the gift and look at it from all sides and allow us to teach our children what they look like and what their reflection is on the world. So the Enneagram is broken up into 9 types, and those types are broken up into centers. We have 3 centers of intelligence. That's how we bring in information. So how our filters of the world. So what you're most powerful in, when you walk into a room, what do? How do you pick up information? Some of us do it through the head. We have mental energy, and that's how we bring in the information of the world. And that's where our thoughts come from, our ideas, our imagination, our curiosity, our rational intuition. And that's where we get our aha moments. And the core emotion of this triad is fear or anxiety. Now, these people wouldn't necessarily say that they're fearful people. They hold on to fear like a security blanket. Some of them are just are in angst. Some try to do everything to shift that fear and push it forward. So that's the head center. Then we have the heart center, which are these 2, 3, and 4. And the heart center is the people that are strong in the heart center. They can walk in a room and know what everybody is feeling. So it's all the feelings. They are the ones who like to connect with people and go deeper with people. They have an emotional responsibility. There's warmth that comes from that. And the core emotion that these people carry around like a security blanket is shame. And then we have the body sense, or the gut triad, the 1s, 9s, and 8s. And these people, this is where you're going to have a sense, when you just walk into a room and you sense that something might be wrong. This is movement. The 8s, 9s, and 1s are people that just do things without really thinking about it. There's a very strong energy, a strong yes or no. When you just feel like you have to say no to something. That's where boundaries come from. And their core emotion is anger. Well, okay. And then those are broken down into stances. So once we bring in information through our strongest mode of operation, then we have our stances. And this is what you do with that information. So you have one mode. Let's say you're an 8, and so you're bringing information through your body, and that is going to be supported by another mode, and then one is going to be left behind or just repressed. And so what 8s do is 8s are body. They're supported with their mental energy, and then the feelings are repressed. And so in the aggressive stance, you have your 7s, 8s, and 3s. And all of those repress their emotion in some way. So those aggressive numbers, they repress emotion. I already said that. Energy comes at the world. These are the people that walk into a room and say, what needs to, just do it. They have a sense about it. They're the people that come into the room and say what needs to be organized, what needs to be done, what needs to be planned. I watch my daughter walk into, we just moved across country, and we were trying to find, social circles. Well, when we walk into a big, let's say the church, she walks in and it's like, hi, I'm here, and that's what aggressive numbers do. They come at the world. The dependent numbers, you've got your 1s, 2s, and 6s. And these are, they repress the thinking mode. It's not that they don't think, it's that they think all the time, and that thinking is unproductive. They're your rule followers. These are your children that follow you around and talk to you all the time about what's happening right now. Oh, the other thing I failed to mention with the aggressive stance is their orientation to time. So we each have an orientation to time, and aggressive stance people are always thinking forward, always planning for the future. Dependent numbers, their orientation to time is the present. It's the right now. In fact, these people oftentimes will have a plan, and yet that plan will be disturbed if a friend calls and says, hey, do you have a minute? These people are more likely to take the time and sit with them. And then we have the withdrawn stance, your 4s, 5s, and 9s. And these people are repressed in the doing sense, in the gut sense. They have a lot of energy that goes inward, and they take time to withdraw. It's not necessarily introverted. It's just that they need to take time with themselves to figure out what's happening in the world, or to refuel. And their orientation to time is the past. It doesn't mean that they live in the past, or they, oh, woe is me, this happened in the past. It just means that sometimes they have a harder time to get moving. Okay. Now, when we're talking about parenting and children, stances is where I like to start with the Enneagram, because even from very small, you could tell which stance a child is in by what energy they have. If you have a child who is high energy and kind of thinks that the world is all about them, then you probably have an aggressive. And that's not necessarily a bad thing that the world would come at them. It's just the way that they're built, and that creates in them a way to move the world forward. Your dependent stance children, they're the rule followers. They're the ones that are going to be measuring up what's happening with their neighbors. Or I remember one of our friends kept saying to his mom, they don't play the same music we do, Mom. And he turned out to be a dependent number. These are the kids that are do a lot of comparing. And then you have your withdrawn numbers, and these are the kids that they like to take time. They're your wanderers. I had a child who would constantly be playing with the carpet, and my hurry up came out more often with that child than any of my other children, because he was just taking time inward to refuel before he went out into society. And so the thing that the power of the Enneagram is, in these stances, you could see if you yourself are an aggressive person, and that's not, you're in the aggressive stance is what I meant to say. If you're in the aggressive stance and you have a withdrawn child, there's going to be what we like to call heavenly sandpaper. There's going to be a conflict there. A lot of aggressive parents want their withdrawn children. They don't understand how they can just sit and wonder about things, or they could just not be hurried up and plan for things. And so there's some conflict there. The dependent numbers, they oftentimes are people pleasers. And so if you are a dependent number as a parent and you have an aggressive numbered child who is trying to change people or get people moving, you as a dependent number might be on that child, trying to discipline that out of them, trying to discipline that sense of criticizing the other children. You want to get that out of them. So again, there's conflict there between the stances. And so it's okay if you don't know what number they are. The stances kind of bubble up to the surface, and it gives you a chance. It gives you vocabulary with your child to talk about. So that's stances. So let's go into some of the types. Do I have any questions so far? You guys all getting this?
You did have a question, I think, is a type a child a book? Is a type of child a book? I wasn't sure that was Emily.
Is a type of a child a book? Oh, is the type A child a book? Okay. The color coding is off. Yes, I noticed that right before. Sorry, guys. Okay. So I don't really understand the question. Is the type A child a book? I
So
meant eight.
maybe Emily will clarify later. So
right.
You can address it later. Yeah.
Okay, good. Emily, if you could put that in the chat, that'd be great. Okay, so yeah, I didn't mean type A. It's the number 8. And we'll start with the number 8 right here. So the 8 is a challenger. The 8s are in the aggressive stance, and so they're going to be body. They bring in information through their body, and they're supported by their thinking, and their emotions are repressed, or that feeling center is repressed. And so what this causes them to do is to be strong and impactful. It causes them to deny weakness. Now, oftentimes 8s have, yes, read about the 8, not the type A. Good job. Okay, so the 8, they have a soft and fuzzy side, but it's really small, and it's only shown to a few. But it doesn't mean it's not there. But 8s are the people who shoot first, aim later. It's because that body, it's moving, that gut, that sense of knowing what to do is so strong that they just do it. And oh yeah, I got to think about that. And eventually sometime in the future, they'll feel about it. So these are your confident, assertive, decisive, protective, challenging, they make others stronger. They have a very high sense of right and wrong and a high sense of justice. So they like to defend the weaker part of the community. They are in the gut center. They over-identify with the gut. So you'll see with all these triads, there's 3 numbers in each center. One will over-identify, one will under-identify, and one will be in conflict with that. So 8s, they over-identify. And all of the numbers that are in the gut triad, they all have a relationship to anger. 8s, it's the only emotion that they are comfortable with. And how this helped me understand Rebecca is that I, being another number, a 2, I would look at her and feel her anger real quick. And then that would cause me to withdraw from her. And she would then not get her needs met. And so she would continue to get more angry and more angry. Well, when I was able to put words into what was happening and sit down with her and say, this is what's going on. Does that resonate with you? she would then come walk into the room, and I would do a check-in with her. How you doing? And as that anger got more and more, we would sit down and be able to talk about it. And I would be able to really pull her heart out of that box and take a look at it and help her to understand that it's not quite so scary to look at all those emotions. And we ended up calling Tearful Tuesdays, because it ended up where every Tuesday I also homeschool, and we would be going through her schoolwork, and poof, she'd start to cry. And I didn't understand why, because we hadn't really scratched any surface yet of emotion. And then she'd start to talk to me about what was really going on. And that created a great bond. So the gifts of an 8, they take on obstacles with energy and exuberance. They challenge others to do the same. They defend the ones they care about. They advocate for others. And they're driven to empower them. So that's an 8. The Enneagram also gives us language on the high side of a behavior. So 8s tend to act one way when they're healthy. And then the Enneagram also gives us language for the low side of a behavior when we're not healthy. And there's one more thing before we go on to the next slide. All of these arrows here, when have a behavior, actually, no, sorry. When a number is stressed, they go to one number. And when they're taking care of themselves, they go to another number. So 8s borrow behavior from a 2 when they're in health, when they feel good. And that's when they take care of people. That's when they notice other people. And that's when they can go out of their way to do something for another person. When 8s are stressed, they take information, not information. They take behavior from 5. This is when an 8 will go in their room and just start to read and research and be alone and kind of manage their energy that way. So, okay, any questions about that? Go ahead and put them in the chat. Okay, so that's an 8. The 3. So we're not going to go right around the circle. Right now we're talking about the numbers that are in the aggressive stance. And 3s are called the achiever. A 3, their core motivation is to be seen as successful, admired, approved, worthwhile, and competent. 3s have that, they bring in information through their heart, so that emotion, and yet they repress their own emotion. And so what this causes is the superpower of a 3 is to be able to read the room and be who everybody thinks they should be. They're your sales people. They're your inspirational speakers, because they can manage that emotion that's happening in the room. They're very, very inspiring people. They're ambitious, efficient, achieving, status conscious, and adaptive. Their sense of value comes from being perceived as successful and capable. They plan despite their own desires, and they shapeshift. They're able to shapeshift for who they think you want them to be. They're your heart types, but they repress emotions, so that leads them to shapeshift. And they have an internal conflict with their own emotion. And so when there is a conflict with another person, they will take that emotion and just mold it over. It will become unproductive, and until they can shift it to something that they need it to be. The relationship to shame. So they're in the emotional center, and the relationship or that emotion is shame. So the relationship to shame stems from feeling worthlessness, not being capable, and not achieving enough. So oftentimes adult 3s say you're only worth your last endeavor, your last success. That's what it is. So gifts, these people are great at being efficient and putting out a successful plan, teaching, helping others succeed. They know how to work around obstacles when others give up, anticipate how others respond, and give unique insight for how to present messages to audiences. Threes take behavior from nines and from sixes. So when a 3 needs to take care of themselves, they'll go to 9, and that's when they actually can, put their energy aside and rest. And that's what 9 gives them. A 6, when they go to 6, that's when they become very aware of other people, and they can actually move a group into action. All right, so that's a 3. The next one in the aggressive stance is a 7. And the core motivation for a 7 is to be optimistic in order to avoid psychological or emotional pain. 7s are shapeshifters also, but they're more of a mental shapeshifter. So there is a story of 5 siblings sitting around the table, and all of them sharing a story. All the same. They all remembered it the same, except for the 7. The 7 turned a negative memory into something where he saved the whole group, and he made it more playful, and he was the Superman of the memory. That's kind of what 7s do. They are optimistic, playful, spontaneous, practical, energetic, and versatile, easily distracted by new ideas or enjoyable activities. They start new endeavors and struggle to complete projects, seldom satisfied, and they are storytellers. 7s take in information through their head, and then their body supports that, and emotion is repressed because they're in that aggressive stance. So this causes them to be planners, and planners of fun and excitement. If you ask a child who is a 7 what's the worst thing that can happen, and they'll probably answer to be bored. My 7, I have my little guy is a 7, and he has a really difficult time working and completing tasks because it becomes boring. But the cool thing about the Enneagram is, even though his emotion is repressed, any parent who has an aggressive number, they need to do emotional check-ins with their kids. And because I have done a lot of emotional check-ins with my son, he is now able to come in and say, "Hey, Mom, the neighbors really, I'm really disappointed." And I told that to my Enneagram coach, who happens to be a 7, and he said that is unheard of for a kid to be able to do that. And so it just goes to show you that that when we understand the Enneagram, we can understand what our kids need at a deeper level, and then cause them to grow up with a better emotional capacity. All right, so that's a 7. The gifts of the 7: see positive in most situations, inspire people with vision or solutions. They bring joy and fun. All right, the 6. Okay, so we're moving into the dependent stance numbers. Remember, the dependent stance are those that repress thinking. Doesn't mean that they don't think, it means that they think all the time about unproductive stuff. So a 6 is called the loyalist. Their core motivation is to be safe and supported. These are the people that go to worst case scenarios. They're very, very quick to see all of the bad things that can happen, and they will try to avoid that. They're very responsible, reliable, questioning, vigilant. They scan the world for dangers or potential threats, seek external evidence of and validation. They see all angles just so they can anticipate all outcomes. Their spin produces doubt, analysis paralysis. They have a hard time making decisions. They're doubting their own doubts, and they seek authority figures, or they're loyal to an idea. So they bring in information through their head, and then they can get stuck there, and that's why they're in that dependent stance. And so they spend a lot of energy in their head seeking more information. And the reason why, or that dependent stance comes out in the way that they will seek all different types of people, all different authority, so that they can make that decision. I hope that makes sense. Their gifts are they seek support and give support. They're very loyal people. They mitigate risks and build teams. They value loyalty that leads them to go out of their way to support others. So that's a 6. So our next one is a 1. Let me look in the chat here. Okay, the next one is a 1. Some Enneagram teachers say that the 1 is labeled the perfectionist. I've talked to a lot of 1s and they say they're not perfectionists. They're more of a reformer, or they cause things to be better. They bring in information through the gut. They're in the gut. But they repress their thinking. That's what makes them in the dependent stance. The 1s, their core motivation is to be good and avoid being at fault. So they bring in information through their body or the gut. They have this natural ability to know it. They just feel it. In fact, you can ask a lot of 1s and they go, I just feel it right here. And I'm pointing to my tummy, their gut. So they bring in information through their gut, and that's supported through their emotion. And that causes them to have an internal critic. Most 1s say that their internal monologue is very loud. And they think that internal critic is a friend, and it's actually not. It criticizes themselves more than anybody else. This causes them to be conscientious, ethical, controlled, principled, strong internal monologue, idealism, and they're harder on themselves. Okay, I said all that. Their relationship to anger. So 1s are in conflict with their own anger. They repress it. So they switch it. And you'll hear a 1 saying that they're annoyed. They oftentimes will use that word. They just annoy me. The gifts, they bring chaos into order. They're very reliable. And they're always improving things. So my second son is a 1. And when he went off to college, we had already had a lot of this language around the Enneagram. And when I first asked him if he had an internal critic, he kind of got a little freaked out. Like, how'd you know? And doesn't everybody? And so we gave a name to his critic. He called him Ahmed, from, I think it's Jeff Dunham, the puppet guy. Or maybe that's not the critic's name, or the comedian's name. But anyway, we called him Ahmed. And his roommate was his best friend, and they went off to college together. And we found a little Ahmed pup. And when Sean would call us and he was really struggling with high anxiety, 1s often do have high anxiety, finally, my husband found this puppet and sent this puppet to my son. And we were on the phone with him, high anxiety. Here we go. Here's the story. And we were talking to him, and he said, I put Ahmed behind the door because I'm not listening to him anymore. And then his roommate came in and found Ahmed, and when Sean had a problem, he would go to Josh, and Josh finally said, hey, is Ahmed behind the door? You got to put him back there. So it became a really cute little thing between them, but helped Sean to manage that internal critic. So, okay, 2s. 2s are called the helpers. Their core motivation is to feel connected, wanted, loved, or needed. They're warm, generous, friendly, complimentary. They bring the human factor. They read emotions of others and use that to earn love through helpfulness. 2s are in the heart triad. They take in information through the heart. They repress their own emotion, though, and then they get stuck thinking about it because that thinking is repressed. Oftentimes, 2s will have to get their gut working, so they'll have to move. They'll have to go out on a run or a walk, or get busy cleaning house when they're mad, in order to sift through their own emotion, in order to feel their own emotion. But what causes that is what causes that a 2 to be really good at is they read the emotion of others. They actually take on that emotion, and then they do something about it. So a 2 will be at a party and see that there's dishes that need to be done, and they'll do the dishes, or they'll cook for people, or they'll serve in some way, just for the hopes that you will like them. So that's what a 2 is. Let's see, anything else I need to tell you about a 2? All right. So now we're moving on to the withdrawn stance. Now remember, withdrawn numbers, they repress the gut mode. And so what that causes them to do is to withdraw in order to refuel. And so 4s are called the individualists. They are the people who bring wonder to this world. Oftentimes, a 4 will be an artist of some sort. Their core motivation is to find what is missing, to be experienced as deep and having significance. The best thing you could ever say to a 4 is, "You're so unique," or "I understand you." They want to be understood. 4s have a sense that something is missing and everybody else has it. So there's this envy that they work with, and that's part of that shame. Others are happier. They feel like others are happier. And there's an aversion to the mundane. They don't like doing the things that people just have to do every day. 4s have experience more emotion in 1 hour than most people do in a whole week. And so when you're parenting a 4, you have to put parameters on it, and you have to just sit with them. So me being a 2, I other people's emotion, and my first daughter, is a 4, and so she would be all in her feels, and I'd want to jump in there with her, and I'd start feeling it with her, and that wasn't the appropriate response, because it would get bigger and bigger and bigger. Because as I would say, I would start to comfort her in it, and I'd say, "Okay, you're feeling this." "No, I'm not feeling that." And she didn't feel understood, because I was trying to tell her what she was feeling, and that wasn't working. And so she'd just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And what I had to find out is I needed to just sit with her with being a 4, and make sure she didn't get too high or too low in that. And eventually she would feel understood. But 4s go to 2 in stress. And so oftentimes with the 4 child, they are starting to do things for other people, and we praise them. We're like, "Oh, that is so great. You did the dishes, or you took out the garbage." But what's really happening is they're stressed. It doesn't mean that they get off the hook and they don't have to do the chores. But when you're seeing them be a good servant serving people, then you kind of have to check in with them and make sure that they're emotionally okay. Okay, so that's a 4. 5s, the investigator. Their core motivation is to be useful or capable, competent, and resourced to meet a demanding world. They're insightful, thoughtful, well-researched, curious. They sense that the world is a demanding place and causes them to pursue intellectual resources, and they compartmentalize emotions. 5s tend to be very unbiased when it comes to emotional stuff. So they can sit with people very, very well. They bring in information through the head. They observe, they gather info, but their body is repressed, which causes them to withdraw a lot from people. They are in the mental triad, the head triad, and so they have a relationship to fear, and they have a hard time making decisions because of that. So fives, they can go to 8 or 7 and draw behavior from that. So when a 5 goes to 8, that causes them to get moving, to do something. And when they go to 7, that causes them to be more lighthearted, to be fun. All right. And the 9 is the peacemaker. Their core motivation is to be comfortable, at peace. 9s are just as guarded on the inside as they are on the outside. And so 9s tend to not have a voice. They merge with a lot of people. If you ask a 9 where they want to go to dinner, more often than not, they just don't really care. They're agreeable, accepting, trusting. They merge with others. They see everybody's viewpoints. They neutralize excessive emotion, and they are the least disruptive. The quote, "A body in motion stays in motion," that's a 9. They have a hard time prioritizing because they can see what needs to get done. That's a gut thing for them. And yet they have a hard time finishing it because they repress their gut as well. They're in that withdrawn stance. They have a relationship to anger, and it comes out as stubbornness. It comes out as passive aggressiveness. They will explode once they hit a breaking point. The gifts of a 9, they're easy to work with, and they're glad to do what is required. They create harmony. They create peace with people. All right. So the Enneagram, you can see the Enneagram gives us so many opportunities to talk with our children. When you see them drawing behavior from another number, you can do a check-in with them. Hey, it looks like this is happening. Let's discuss that together. Also, the Enneagram, which we didn't get into tonight, but it gives us all numbers have a different way of processing defense mechanisms. It also talks about instincts and what are our just instinctual reactions to things. And so you could see with the Enneagram, it is a great way to continue unwrapping the box and bring up the core of your child. And it gives you a lot of words. It gives you a lot of vocab to discuss with each other. The other thing it does too is it gives you vocab to discuss with them about yourself. And it's a way that you can give acceptance to each other and cause each other to grow and to live out in the top side of your number. So when things go sideways, what happens? When you guys are heavenly sandpaper, you're just missing connection. There are some things to do. You got to search for the why. We call it the need beneath the deed. Why is that behavior happening? For teens, sometimes it could be the job of the parent and the child got reversed. So the child is trying to meet your needs as a parent, and children aren't there to get their needs met. No. The children are not there to meet the need of the parent. That's what the other parent or that's what friends are for. Sometimes your own ego gets in the way. So that's what was happening between Rebecca and I, is I wanted to be liked, and she wore that anger, and so that would offend me greatly. And so when I knew that wasn't that she liked me, it had nothing to do, her anger had nothing to do with me. I could remove myself and my own emotion and be there for her and accept her, give her acceptance. Sometimes our children have behavior due to a fear or the fact that their ego is working overtime. For instance, like a 3, if they're not feeling approved of, then they might do something to get that approval, to kind of take it or steal it from people. And that might result in some bad behavior or rebellion. And so, again, the Enneagram would give language to say, hey, what are you needing in that instance? And how can we do it together? How can we get that need met together? So when things go sideways, confession and forgiveness is a great, powerful tool. Research shows that a confession forgiveness cycle actually builds a better brain. When you think about a baby coming home from the hospital, there has been a cycle of a painful instance, the pain is taken away, and there's happiness, and that cycle gets played over and over and over. I think the number is about 1,200 times before they actually leave the hospital to go home. And so that confession forgiveness cycle, there's a pain, and a parent comes in and says, hey, that was wrong of me. Will you forgive me? That will actually create a better brain. And it takes humility, and it takes living on the high side of your number in order to be able to do that. It doesn't mean that your child gets off of their consequences. You actually have to put in those consequences, make sure that their behavior has a consequence. But you also want to build in teamwork. You want to make sure that that child knows that you are their biggest fan and will always be their biggest fan forever. So oftentimes I'll ask my children, or I'll coach a client to ask their children, how can I be a team in this? Like, look at my face. Do you see anger in my face? No? Okay. Well, how can I be your teammate in this? All right. So the benefits of the Enneagram is you share grace with yourself as well as your child. You have lingo, you have vocabulary to actually talk about the things that are happening in your heart. You can enjoy your children and all their strengths and their weaknesses. You can encourage your children and become their biggest fan. You remove your children's aloneness, speaking to his or her worst fears and hidden messages. You know when your ego is taking over, and you can unwrap the gift of your child. You know, when you are able to share with your son or daughter, hey, I see this, and this is, I see this in you, like with Rebecca, I see you being very angry right now. And I could say that comes across as kind of bossy. And I could share with her that that's just the way that she's made. She's created that way. And that the strength of that is she can get a lot of things done. She has a lot of power and strength to move a whole group to do something about the injustice of the world. And yet right now, that can't happen, because right now that looks like anger and it's off-putting. And so you can share with your child their strengths and their weaknesses. And because it's built on this Enneagram, it isn't, they don't personalize it. And so it becomes a good thing and a good way to talk about it. It's not taken personally. So you can unwrap the gift of your child. You know, we have such a high calling as parents, right? To be a parent is such an ideal thing that not everybody can measure up to. And yet, when we're given the right tools and we're allowed to have, you know, communication with our kids, we can launch them into adulthood in such a way that they can become great friends later. They can become great people in the community because they know what's happening in their heart, and they can remove their own ego so that they can be more effective out in the world. And the greatest thing is that they would want to come home. You know, my Sean, who is a 1, we started talking about the Enneagram a couple years before he went off to college. And I will never forget the day that I dropped him off at school. As a 1, if I had any emotion, outward emotion, he would take that on and he would try to do something to make it better, to make it right. And he would go on as he was doing something wrong. And it was a criticism. And so I'm saying goodbye to him, and I'm starting to get, my eyes are starting to get a little leaky. And I knew right away, because I knew the heart of my child, I was able to say, hey, this has nothing to do with you. These tears mean that I love you and that I am so excited that you are in the best place that you could possibly be. And you don't have to do anything about my own emotion. But this means that I've worked hard and I love you a ton, and I'm going to miss you greatly. And it was the greatest thing, because as your kids become adults, then they can start meeting your need as well. And because Sean knew that I was a 2 and I wanted so badly to be needed and to be liked, he gave me some of the best words, and he wrapped his arms around me. He's 6'2" and I'm 5'7". So he wrapped his arms around me and he said, Mom, you are so important to me. And that was better than hearing, Mom, I love you, because to me, that just talked to my heart, that talked to my ego. And I'm very grateful, because the Enneagram gave us both the knowledge of each other so that now we can be great friends. Only now that he's an adult. So that is the Enneagram. So what are the next steps? The Enneagram is something that I can talk about. I give lots of day-long seminars, and we don't even cut the surface of what the Enneagram can offer. And so if you're interested in,
I figure out how to put this on my microphone.
did anybody have a question? If you want to jump off into the next step, just for this week only, I have taken the price off of my 30-minute typing interview. And so my link is right there. My website is trishaauto.com. And I have a 30-minute typing interview. You and I, there's my calendar link. You can make an appointment with me and you can talk about the Enneagram. And we can discuss what your number might be, and maybe even what your child's number could be. And we can discuss some of the things that could come up because of that.
I'm late and I can't get it to work.
I am also starting a parenting class in April, and there's a link there too. But you could go to my website and under classes, that is where you can sign up for my parenting class. But that's it for my talk, and I'd love to answer any questions. I think I have this Zoom link for another half an hour. So what you got?
Link in the chat for anyone if they want to book an appointment.
Thank you, Jada. Jada put the chat the link in the chat. Crystal, did you have a question? All right. Well, if you is there a question there?
Yeah, there's a question. Well, there's a question in the chat.
In the chat. Okay.
Olivia, you got it? Do you want me to read it? Or you're going to read it?
I got it.
Okay.
Do you feel this works great with students and children who have additional needs such as ADHD? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because ADHD can often be tied to their ego. And sometimes it's, oftentimes 7s are, oftentimes 7 children have ADHD or 8. It's with that energy that goes outwards. So yeah, it can work well with that. Why are 6s often mistyped as 8s? I think I'm an 8, but as a child didn't seem like an 8. Okay, great. Sign up. Let's talk about it. 8s and 6s are often mistyped together, especially based on their instinct and what their instinct is. 6s have a great spectrum. So there are some 6s that run away from their fear, and some 6s that just go directly at that fear. And those types of 6s, they oftentimes look like an 8. However, 6s are more mental, and so there's some things that they do that that will look like a 6, but it's really hard to. I can't see you, and I can't pick up on your energy right now, so I couldn't tell you if you were a 6 or an 8. So sign up for my class, and we can discuss it more. I hope that helped a little bit. Yes, adopted daughters. I have 2 adopted children. And it has really helped me figure out what's their personality and what's their behavior based on the start of their life, that abandonment. My Rebecca, gosh, because I've known the Enneagram, I've been able, 8s tend to have a feeling of if they're not in control, they're going to be abandoned. And she already was abandoned by her first mom. And so it's given us a great ability to talk about that and to come together, and for me to comfort that and to become her teammate in that. Is there always a dominant number? Yes, you have a core motivation, and that's based on your type, and that will never change. The behavior can change, but not the motivation. So once you're born a number, you were always that number.
I have a question. This individual session that I could sign up for, is it free or complimentary for this
Yes.
time or a short
The
time?
30-minute typing interview is free for a week. And so if you sign up within the week, then I would love to meet with you, and it's absolutely no cost.
Okay, thank you.
My passion is I really want parents to be empowered to meet their child at such a deeper level. And we have so many courses and, tricks of the trade, so to speak, for parenting younger kids, and not a lot out there for connection with teens. And yet that is such a special time. Teenage rebellion doesn't have to happen. The only reason why teenage rebellion happens is because there's nobody that knows their heart. And yet if we can get in there and tell them that we're the safe place, we're their biggest fans. Doesn't matter what your behavior is, I will always meet you where you're at. I may not like what you did, and yet I will always love you. And even if you're in prison, I'll be the one that visits you, And how do we tell them that when the world is saying that families are not okay? Family, you shouldn't want to hang out with your family. Your parents don't know anything. Your parents are stupid. So they have all of this stuff that's coming at them. And yet it's our job to let them see that we are their biggest fan. Okay, I see a couple things coming up in the chat. Let me see. Oh. Yeah, my parents definitely didn't appreciate that I was an 8. Parenting an 8 is very, very difficult because 8s they're born wanting to take on the world. I remember one time Rebecca really wanted to play with a friend of mine. She wanted to hang out with my friend Debbie. And it was not my best mommy moment, but I was carrying her back. We were camping with a whole bunch of people, and I was carrying her back to our campsite. And I said, "Would you like Debbie to be your mom?" And she said, "No, you're my mom." And I didn't get it, because being a mom, there was connection there, but I couldn't connect with her because she was always trying to take over my job as an 8. She would see what needed to get done and just do it, and do it at a 4-year-old level. And I'd have to tell her no. I mean, it was so hard to parent her. And I'm so thankful that Enneagram has given me the ability to say, hey, look, you're going to be awesome at that when you're an adult. But right now, this is my job. And it's given her freedom to do what she needs to do in a way that might not work for me. Okay, I think I'm a 1 and my daughter is a 4. It seems that the arrows of stress go towards each other's number. I appreciate your comment when the 4 is being helpful, productive. It may be more of a stress thing because as a 1, it's something I'm hopeful she will lean towards. So I have a 4, a daughter, and she is incredibly helpful. She's the one that I call on when I need another mom in the house. However, that isn't her strongest suit. It's not. She has learned over time of what needs to happen and when it needs to happen. But when she was younger and she'd be stressed, she'd just start doing everything that needed to get done, and that was my aha. I got to check in with her. That's what I meant by that. So you don't want to let that ego, that number, just take over. It is okay as a parent to guide that and say, okay, you do need to get these things done. There is a consequence if they aren't getting done, but it also allows us to talk and be vulnerable. Okay, some things to keep in mind while learning more about the numbers. The stance. Stances are really important, and stances give you a lot of things to talk about with your child. So if you can narrow down that energy level and put it into a stance, then you only have to narrow it down between 3 numbers. So if you know for sure that your child is a withdrawn number, then you know that they're a 5, a 4, or a 9. And based on how that energy is going out, is it going out with a mental energy, or is it going out with a mental energy, or if it's going out with a gut energy, then you can determine what number they are. I hope that makes sense. It'd be interesting to learn the chat just popped up. Which numbers jive best and which butt heads. Okay, all numbers jive with all numbers, and all numbers butt heads with all numbers. We call it heavenly sandpaper. The reason why is to be the best friend or spouse or the best parent that you possibly can. That means you gotta be in the higher side of your number. So when you are in the higher side of the number, you can look outwards and meet the needs of those that are around you. If you're on that lower side of the number, that causes you to be, selfish or manipulative or prideful or whatever the passion of that number is. And so any number can marry any number can parent any other number. It's just that you have to be at the top side of that number. I hope that helps. Okay, to be on the healthy side, the question is, could you suggest ways to be on the high or healthy side of your number? Yes. Call me for that 30-minute interview because it takes a lot. There is a lot of that the Enneagram can offer as far as figuring out our vulnerabilities. So, perfect. Any other questions? Well, I love these questions. You guys have obviously had some information or knowledge about the Enneagram. It's right before the meeting we talked about, I was talking to one of you about the test. You can take a test online. Although tests are just some place to launch off. I have rarely met somebody who has been tested or taken an online Enneagram test and stayed with that number. Usually that number will guide you to 2 or 3 numbers that you might be. But an Enneagram test is very hard to test what your motivation is. So oftentimes tests can ask you certain questions about your behavior, but numbers behave in different ways. Types, your personality behaves in different ways, and it could look like another number. Or you may just not know that about yourself yet, and so you're going to answer a question a certain way. And so it's really important to talk to somebody who knows the Enneagram well, or to talk to your friends and say, hey, am I this way? Do I look like this when I do that? And the Enneagram has always meant to be a vocal thing, something to talk about. Okay. Well, great. Any other questions before we sign off? I'm so thrilled that you took the time to be here. I love talking about the Enneagram and I love talking about relationships. I really hope that you have found the Enneagram to be a tool that is can be well used. So just remember, you were given that child and you are the best parent for that child, and you have the right information, the right heart, and the right tools. And this can be done well, and you've got what it takes to do it well. Are strong-willed children often 8s? Strong-willed children depends on how their strong will comes out. So 8s are strong-willed. 5s are very strong-willed. But a 5's strong will might come across as more passive. So no, a lot of numbers are very strong-willed. 2s and 9s are not. 7s are. 6s are. It just depends on what they're trying to be strong-willed about. Great. Okay. Great. Well, if there are no more questions, then I will sign off from here. I hope to be talking to you in our 30-minute typing interview. This is so fun. Okay. Okay, hope to see you next time. Thank you, everybody.